Grown-up things can be quite overwhelming for a child. Adults tend to have a difficult time taking the stand to testify against someone who hurt them. So imagine how scary it would be for a child. This little girl had to take the stand to testify against a man who had wronged her. And as soon as she saw him, she couldn't move. Everything inside of her told her not to do it. That was until she signaled something to her dog. Carl has a lot of responsibilities as a working dog, but he isn't your typical working dog. Carl's a 65-pound boxer, and he's meant to protect and serve. He's not a police dog, but he was definitely a hero to one little girl. Carl is a special canine circuit dog who attends court. Sometimes when children have to take the stand, they tend to have a difficult time, and this is where dogs like Carl come in. But Carl has a certain advantage. Carl was born unable to hear. As hard as it is to believe, this actually helped Carl in his life. He wasn't like any dog in his unit. The other canines had to go through training to ignore the courtroom sounds. People's cries, the general buzz, and the banging gavel can make dogs go crazy. But thanks to his hearing impairment, Carl didn't even notice the sounds. But it also affected his work. Because Carl couldn't hear, he was a laid-back kind of dog, which made him a hit with children. He was also big enough to make them feel safe, but floppy enough to make them feel relaxed. Carl also liked to wear a blue hat to court every single day, which made him seem goofy. And that made the kids love him even more, especially one little girl that Carl assisted. But his hearing loss did cause one issue. Because Carl was deaf, his training was a bit more difficult than other pups. A deaf dog requires special instructions. Since they can't hear their commands, eye contact is imperative, which can be a problem. Just imagine trying to train an excited puppy that can't hear you. Instead of just telling them to heel when they're going crazy, you have to captivate their full attention. But Carl surprised his trainers when he began to do something one day. Even though he couldn't hear, Carl successfully learned to understand an unspoken language. Carl learned to communicate with American Sign Language. This just proves how smart Carl really is. Carl surprised all of his trainers with how quickly he learned to understand the commands signed. Now that he could understand his trainers' commands, Carl began to thrive. He was quickly turning into an amazing candidate. This new form of communication did create another problem, though. A problem showed itself when it came to Carl's communication skills while interacting with kids. The other courtroom dogs could be controlled by voice commands, but Carl needed sign language. This meant that the kids had to learn to communicate with Carl using signs. Anxious hands in a brand new language didn't really go hand in hand. That much was obvious. The kids adored Carl, but they couldn't communicate with him. So the trainers decided to do something amazing. Carl's trainers created an easy-to-learn hand signal system, which made it easy for children to learn how to talk to Carl. It also made them feel like they had a secret language that only they and Carl understood. It wasn't long before Carl was taking the courtroom by storm, helping lots of children in the process. But there was one little girl that really stood out. One little girl that Carl would provide an incredible amount of help for. Carl's ability to sign captivated the little girl. She immediately bonded with Carl, which really helped considering the difficulty of her case. Unfortunately, a man had severely wronged her in the past, which left her completely wary of the world around her. And now she had a difficult task: face the man again in court. But Carl was able to do something remarkable for the little girl. With just one sign, he was able to change her life. After an intense amount of preparation, the little girl seemed ready for court. As soon as she walked into the courtroom, the little girl became engulfed with anxiety. The worst possible thing happened when she took the stand. She completely froze. She had no clue how she could face that horrible man again. But then she remembered something. She quickly signed to Carl, and that sign would change her life. The girl signed for Carl to come sit by her, and he immediately rose to her. His very presence calmed her down, and his big muscular body made her feel safe. With Carl by her side, the little girl could testify. She made it through the whole process without any problems. All of her prepping came to her, and she continued to grow stronger. But what happened at the end of court? Thanks to Carl, the little girl could testify. Because of Carl's help, the man was sentenced to jail and would never hurt the little girl again. What an incredible victory. And it was all thanks to Carl. He completely changed the little girl's life. She never had to worry about that man again, and her life was forever free of him. And all it took was the confidence that the pup gave to her. Carl's story quickly grew. Carl's story has been seen by millions of people. From actual news coverage to social media posts, Carl's truly made his mark. Because of this, the K9th Circuit program has gotten tons of attention. The trainers of these heroes of the courtroom are grateful for Carl's fame. Now there are more children that know that they can have a fluffy protector by their side on the stand. And Joanna, Carl's trainer, couldn't be happier. Carl doesn't only support the kids in the courtroom. Once the trial's done, he doesn't stop seeing the children. We'll be there as long as the child wants Carl to stay in their life. He's helped a lot of children, Joanna said in a recent interview. Children don't have to deal with the court's aftermath alone. They can schedule visits with Carl, which can help them heal from the process. And Carl continues on with his life. Even though he doesn't realize it, Carl's a hero to many kids, and he continues to serve and protect. Thanks to Carl's protection, kids never have to worry again. Carl just keeps spending his days doing what he does best. Carl and the rest of the canines in the unit make an amazing difference to children on an everyday basis. And even though Carl will never understand, the world thanks you.